And we are live with yet another episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. This Thanksgiving Eve, I don't know if that's a term that we would use for this, but I'm going to create it anyway. And we've got some major news to talk about, including the Blake Snell signing from last night, the latest Juan Soto rumors, and how the Dodgers are apparently ruining baseball and much more. Joining me tonight is Dodgers beat contributor Mike Salas, or better known as Doom Sal to everybody that is in Dodgers Twitter or in our comments section here. And then Babyface Roger is behind the scenes. We may get some of his thoughts and opinions on this tonight as well. But before we dig into all of that, let's thank our sponsor, Bet Online. This Thanksgiving holiday, why not head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting? Bet Online. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC and boxing, BetOnline has it all. Head to the website today and see why BetOnline is America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And yeah, basically, let's just get straight into it. Blake Snell signs. I wouldn't say it's surprising because this is a guy that I think has been linked to the Dodgers last offseason. The Athletic reported, at the trade deadline, if the Giants were willing to trade with the Dodgers had huge interest in him there. And again, once he hits the open market, the Dodgers strike and get him to a 5-year, $182 million deal. First things first, Mike, before we get into all the, the nitty gritty of the contract, the deferrals, the signing bonus, face value, you see the news, you see when it breaks. What are your thoughts? Do you like the move? Do you like bringing in a pitcher like Blake Snell? What are your overall thoughts on the move?
I was excited about the move. Tim Rogers and I have talked about this many times. Both him and I have been on the Blake Snell bandwagon to come to Los Angeles. I think he has a lot to offer. He's still relatively sort of young and still kind of a little bit into his prime. So I think he's going to be doing very well for the Dodgers. I'm super excited about it. I couldn't be happier. I think he's the better pitcher out of the other three that are available, kind of like what we did last year when we got Jack Flaherty. I think the front office did another great job in picking out the person who's going to best fit into the ball club. So super excited about it.
Yeah, I think looking at the move, the first thing, entering the offseason, what I knew the Dodgers needed to do, especially despite them winning the World Series, we saw the pitching depth get tested more than it did in 2023. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
had to run multiple bullpen games through their postseason run. And fortunately enough, the Dodgers still ended up being world champions despite only having 3 legit starters. All 3 of them battled injuries throughout the season. Walker Buehler had inconsistencies. Flaherty had some inconsistencies with his velocity. There was that back injury that was rumored out there that kind of botched the Yankees trade, but that Ken Rosenthal reported. And then Yamamoto missed, a good, third of the season with a
Mm-hmm.
shoulder injury of his own. So the Dodgers really did have to add some depth to this starting rotation. And in my opinion, I wrote a couple weeks back, they needed to add a lefty, and the 2 that have been linked to them the most is Max Fried and Blake Snell. Obviously, the Dodgers weren't going bargain bin shopping this Black Friday. They actually wanted to get one of the top 5 starting pitchers. And I even said, I'm very, very confident that they were going to land one of the top 5 starting pitchers. And they, in fact, did do that. I don't think they are done adding, whether it's offense or, say another pitcher or 2, whether it's bullpen, starter, you name it. They're still going to continue to add. I think they really just needed a lefty in the rotation. I know they're more than likely going to bring Kershaw back, but I think we need someone that's, like you said, in their prime, best years yet ahead. He's a 2-time Cy Young winner. He's
Mm-hmm.
got 2 ERA titles. He made an all-star team. And we've seen him, he's had a very good track record against the Dodgers, whether it's in the regular season with the Padres and the Giants or in the World Series when he was with the Rays. Snell's a really good pitcher. He's a very dominant pitcher. And I think the move, even though it's a 5-year commitment and a lot of money, I think it's really going to look good for the Dodgers, not only in 2025, but in the future. But I think what a lot of people are getting upset with right now is all the details of the contract that kind of came out throughout the night. So the first thing first is the deal includes a $52 million signing bonus. It includes $62 million in deferred money after the contract ends. Limited no trade clause with no opt out. So he's going to be a Dodger with, you know, for the next 5 years. And with all that said, with the signing bonus and then the deferrals, the average annual value of the contract is around 32 to 33 million dollars. So the Dodgers, with kind of the wiggling room with the deferrals, kind of trim the AAV down around $3 to $4 million, so they save some money there. Any of that surprise you or shock you? I feel like the Dodgers have been known as the Los Angeles deferrals, and I feel like you have to. I feel like it's part of being a big free agent to come to Los Angeles. You have to have some deferrals coming out. Are you surprised that they got yet another contract with deferrals, Mike?
Definitely not surprised. I don't think that this is going to be the last contract, of the year that's going to have deferrals into it. I don't see why people are so surprised on the deferrals. I think it's more hyped up, especially when Otani signed and his big deferrals and what he wanted to have done. You know, he wanted to build a team around him that's going to be successful and guaranteed to go to the postseason almost every year and have the high possibility of making it to the World Series almost every single year. Um, a lot of teams do the deferral portion of it. The signing bonus was a little bit surprising to me, but not too much. Yeah, it's just kind of funny, looking at social media and watching everybody lose their minds over this. This isn't going to be the last one. When we start signing a couple other players and possibly pick up Sasaki, on a minor league deal, that's when the real social media blitz is really going to happen. But one thing I want to point out is, the Dodgers have made money off of Otani this year. I think it's like 50 or 80 million dollars, if not $100 million already, and they're willing to spend that money. Kind of like what they told him is, we're going to spend money to build a team around you almost every single year, and the Dodgers are keeping to that. It's not the Dodgers' fault because, let's just say, the Orioles, the Toronto Blue Jays, or some doesn't want to spend money. They have the money to spend. They have this opportunity to do it. The Dodgers are willing to, just like the New York Yankees and the New York Mets. Their salary is just as high, if not higher, than the Dodgers is. So it's not uncommon, for this. It's just, does ownership want to spend the money, or are they going to sit on it and not do anything about it?
Yeah, and I think the Dodgers knew what they were getting themselves into with signing Otani, because it wasn't just a baseball move, it was a business move as well. And we've
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about it on DodgersBeat.com in our articles that we've written. We've also talked about it on this show. The Dodgers are making pretty much, they're just printing money because of Otani and all the revenue that he generates the team. You are correct. They have driven in, they've added almost 100 million or more just off of Otani, whether it's endorsements or just his name alone connected to the franchise. So add that to the books. The Dodgers this season, in terms of team revenue, was estimated to be well over $600 million,
Mm-hmm.
the most in Major League Baseball this season. And then you add in the fact that they go on a World Series run and win the World Series. You can add around another $100 million on top of that, based off of tickets, merchandise, all this other stuff that's going into it. I mean, they even showed, like, the players' pool money from the postseason this year was at an all-time high, and the Dodgers, they finished the job and go all the way. So they have the money to do whatever they want. That's kind of why I've been very adamant that says, I know what the CBT says. I know what threshold they're projected to be in. They're projected to be in the third tier, so they're going to have tax penalties. Any
Mm-hmm.
free agent that they sign from here on out, they have to pay 110% tax. So you
Yep.
sign a guy, to a seven, say they re-sign Walker Buehler to a 1-year deal for 7 million, 10 million. It's really almost like a 14, 15, 17 million dollar contract on their books in terms of taxes. And, credit to the Dodgers. It seems like they don't care about money. Money tis but an object to them. They don't really care. They are run by a hedge fund company who deals with billions and billions of dollars. 6 point, whatever billion is allocated to the Dodgers, brand and the team as a
Hmm.
whole and what they're valued as. I think it's good for them to spend money. I think, like you said, more and more of these owners should open up their pockets, invest in your team, especially these young up and coming teams like the Baltimore Orioles. It seems like they're connected with a lot of the big free agents, but are they really going to open up their checkbook even with their new owner? That remains to be seen. The Dodgers, where they're at right now, they are the evil empire. They've won multiple pennants. They're coming off a World Series victory. They got the money, they got the, all eyes are on them because a lot of players and superstar players would rather defer money to come and be a part of whatever the Dodgers are building right now. I don't think it's a bad thing for baseball. It just sucks if you're not a fan of the Dodgers because this is their all in window. I mean, am I wrong on any of this?
No, not at all. I mean, just like you're saying, it's not a bad thing for baseball. It may seem like it to um, those organizations, like we were talking about, that doesn't want to spend the money. Yeah, they're going to get all mad, and say, "Oh, the Dodgers, even the Yankees and the Mets, are trying to buy a championship." Well, no, they're building a team, that's there. It's a franchise, it's a business, and you got to spend money to make things happen. We haven't even touched on the TV revenue that they're getting from Japan and Korea and everything overseas. Uh, so that's another pool of cash, that the Dodgers are dipping into, not including the revenue that they made off of the World Series this year from Fox, being from there, everything that they get from the local sports networks that they get from here. So I mean, like we're talking about, they're willing to spend the money. They want to build a team. They want to build an organization and a brand that people are going to like and that people are going to remember. And they're building a dynasty, kind of like the New England Patriots did. And, it's on the West Coast this time.
Yeah, I understand what the Dodgers are doing, and we're gonna get into that what we think the team is going to do the rest of this offseason. We'll talk about the payroll and everything, but I kind of want to stay on Blake Snell right now. What
Hmm.
are your overall expectations for him in the starting rotation? Clearly he's probably going to be a top 3 arm. Do you have a certain idea of innings this guy's going to get this year? In terms of overall stats, you know, we've seen, what excites you the most about adding a pitcher like Blake Snell to this starting rotation?
The thing that excites me the most about him is his history that he has so far, in the Major League Baseball. He's a proven pitcher. He's proven to be a number one, number two starter, the ace of your organization. I'm hoping, he can pitch more than 6 innings, up to 7 innings, because all the talk, right now is the Dodgers need to go to a 6-man rotation. Well, I just posted an article today, that kind of goes over some of that, and how that's going to work. Mark Pryor, was on a different show, and had commented on the 6-man rotation about how difficult it's going to be, in regards to a 15, 18 game series, and how you're going to have to drop people in. Does it work? What happens when somebody gets in? Does the Dodgers organization have, the backing and the pitchers, in the minors that are going to be able to come up and fill in those spots when somebody's hurt, you know. So we'll see about that. I'm hoping he's going to do great. I'm hoping he's going to do what he did in San Francisco, when he was with San Diego, even with the Devil Rays. So, I'm hopeful for him, and I think he's going to be a very good addition to this team. And I hope he doesn't burn out, and I hope he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of to like about Snell's game. I think the Dodgers, the way they're going to go about things, like you mentioned with Mark Pryor stating on, I believe, Dodgers territory with the foul territory with, friend of the show, Clint over there.
Hmm.
Um, Everything that they're kind of trying to predict, I don't think traditional sense of a workhorse is really a thing in baseball anymore. Yes, there are, a couple starters around the league, like a Corbin Burns, who's going to demand well over $200 million because he can go 190 to 200 innings if you ask him to it, as long as everything goes well. However, the Dodgers, they haven't gotten a starter close to that number in years. I mean,
Mm-mm.
the guy that led their team in innings was Gavin Stone, a rookie at like 140, and that's really asking for. That's like saying, wow, that's a really good season from him. I mean, Tyler Glass now even set his career high at 130. I think the career high for Snell is just 180 innings or
Yes.
180 innings pitched. So are as a Dodger fan, when I look into, say, they have a 6-man rotation, I don't think they're done adding to that rotation, whether they want to re-sign a Bueller, whether they want to add, another, kind of third tier starter, say a Roki Sasaki, if they get him with the international pool money. The sky is limitless for this team right now. And I think it only benefits these pitchers, because I think you're going to see them, I guess, quote unquote, baby them, into a sense, to say, hey, we have the depth to get through the regular season. We've shown that year after year. We win 90 to 100 games every single season since like 2017. We're going to make the playoffs. Our goal right now is to make sure that whatever happened in 2024 doesn't happen for 2025, because as much as we've enjoyed the ride of the dogs in the bullpen, I would really appreciate it if the Dodgers would just go into October with the full, 5 or 4-man rotation and have a given starter on that day. And I think Blake Snell has a really good track record. He's done really well, especially in the second half of the season throughout his career. I mean, if you even look at as recent as last season, you know, albeit he signed in late March, so
Mhm.
there was only a couple weeks for him to get ramped up and ready, and he struggled in the first half of the season with the Giants, a 6.31 ERA in the first half last season, and then if you look in the second half, it was a 1.45. So he was borderline an ace. He had that no hitter, I believe, in August, and he
Yep.
was one of the best pitchers in the National League. And when he is on, he is one of the best lefties in the game currently right now. And what he does, his game, it's strikeouts. He's got good velocity. If there's one concerning thing, it's the walks, but even
Walks.
I think that's a little bit overplayed now, because one thing I liked to see from last year compared to his Cy Young year in 23 is he decreased his walk rate. So he's walking less guys, but he increased his strikeout totals. So if he can continue that trend and say, even almost in strikeout percentage, he was in the 98th percentile last year with 34. Say if he jumps that up to 35, 36, that's like elite of, strikeout arms that are on the market. Any other concerns with Snell? I know he had the groin injury last year. Could that be for him being rushed? I mentioned the walks. Any concerns with Snell?
No, not really. I mean, he's going to come into the organization. The pitching staff is going to take a look at him. Everybody knows. Mike Pryor. What everybody calls the Mark Pryor lab. That he's going to go in there. They're going to make some adjustments to him where adjustments are needed. The walk rate that he has, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. In 2025, like I said, they're going to make some adjustments. I'm not too worried about his health. I think he's pretty healthy. He did rush through things because he signed late. Um, I'm just I'm worried about his dirt. The only thing that I'd be worried about is his durability. Is he going to last in a 6-man rotation for 162 games? Before going into the playoffs and be ready, to pitch as good, if not better, during October. And that's for all the pitchers on the team. Is Glass now going to be able to do that? With his history that's happening. I'm not too worried about Yamamoto. I think he's going to be, perfectly fine with that. But I'm more concerned about Glass now. I'm really, I don't know if we want to go, this deep into it, Cody, but I'm really concerned about Bobby Miller. I think that he's one person that needs to be traded, and we need a more reliable pitcher, than Bobby Miller. Gonsolin has a little bit to prove, even though I watched a number of his games and what he did in Oklahoma. It's a little bit different, I understand, than it is coming back to the majors, but his stuff looked really good. especially when he was doing his rehab work. And Dustin May is another, is another one who's going to be in question. So our 6-man rotation, may it be Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Gonsolin, Miller, and Dustin May. There's a lot of questions, you know, on that bottom tier of the lineup.
You that kind of segues it perfectly into our next point. Yes, the current rotation of the Dodgers technically could be set. If you look at fan graphs, the way they have it structured, you have Blake Snell, you have Yamamoto, Glass now, Otani, even though he will be delayed. I assume he'll probably be back in April in that rotation. He even mentioned himself during when he accepted the MVP award. He said he wants to be ready by that Japan series.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone can do it, I think it could be him because he is superhuman. But I feel like the Dodgers are going to kind of play it a little bit slow considering it is his second career Tommy John surgery he's coming off of. So we'll see what happens there, but he will be in the rotation. Then rounding it out, you have the 2 1-year deal, guys that the Dodgers re-signed last week in Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May. And we already know their injury history. Gonsolin, during the turkey giveaway for the Dodgers, he mentioned that he is as healthy as he's ever been and that there are no inning restrictions for him this upcoming season. We saw how close he was to coming back. So I think he is healthy. And I know a lot of people have lost faith in the Catman, but I still see him as what he did in 22. I think he can get close or at least replicate it enough to be an above average league arm, whether it's for the Dodgers or if he wants
Mm-hmm.
to be used as a trade chip. And then you have Dustin May, who I've already stated has some of the nastiest stuff I've ever seen. I've seen him in
Definitely.
person, seen it on TV, wicked movement. But is he built to be a starter? Is he built to stay in the rotation? Is he built to start every fifth or sixth day? That still remains to be seen. I've made the running joke when your career high in innings is in 2020. I don't think that's a good thing because that was only a 60-game season. So, what do the Dodgers do there? Like, there's a couple guys that they're on the market, and I've seen a lot of people starting to comment that early on. Nando 390. Mike, is Walker Buehler is it done? I've seen a lot of people. Ken Rosenthal even reported today on Foul Territory. He said that he would, I guess, assume that it's more than likely that the Dodgers aren't going to re-sign him. Do you think the door is still open for Buehler to come back?
I think the door's still open for Bueller to come back. I don't think it's completely shut down, especially after the signing of Snell. Walker Bueller still has a place on this team. Uh, I don't think Friedman is going to let him go super easy since he's the one who drafted him. When he came to the Dodgers. So I would love to see Bueller stay. I would love for him to take um, May's spot and put Dustin May into a long reliever. You know, maybe for the sixth inning, the seventh inning, eighth inning. Whatever's needed for him. I think that'll be a great spot for him. That'll be able to get his confidence back up, be able to work on his pitching and this command that he's going to need to be worked on. Instead of like we're talking about, if you're going to go to this 6-man rotation and you have Dustin May, in their pitching, let alone Bobby Miller in their pitching, and they only last 3 or 4 innings because they're like throwing all over the place, your 6-man rotation is now done. You know, so there's a lot of things that need to go in there, and that's why having a reliable pitcher that's going to be in there like a Crochet, you know, I know everybody's like super jacked up on Sasaki, and I've done a lot of writing on on him over the years. He's got a lot to prove,
Got a
coming
lot of
in.
red flags that, like, I feel like people need to be prepared for that.
People do need to be prepared for that. He has not lasted too long in the NPB. He has been hurt a number of times. His conditioning in the NPB, which is not as rigorous as it is in the major, has been a question almost every single year. He's had problems with his pitching hand in regards to having number of blisters on it that has affected his pitching. And remember that the ball is different in the NPB than it is in the major leagues. The seams are different. They're smaller. It's a smaller ball. It's more tackier than what they have here in the majors, and that has affected his pitching hand, quite a bit, over the years. And now he had, just this year, missed a number of months in regards to having some type of mystery shoulder forearm injury that Lotte never really advertised or could comment much on that. So the Dodgers still, in my opinion, still need to have one more really good, solid pitcher. And who's that going to be? We have other ones that are in the bank, that's there. And let's not forget, even though he's a young kid at 20, 21 years old, Jackson Ferris, from the Tulsa Drillers has been, looked at and what am I trying to say? And is being replicated as the next Blake Snell.
Yeah, I mean, as Carlos puts it, Carlos the Gambler in the chat right now, the whole Dodgers rotation is a red flag. And that is true. I've seen a lot of, whether it's Fox, MLB, or Talking Baseball from John Boy Media, they're posting the Dodgers rotation and says, man, this is going to be a problem. And Mike, I like what you put on X where you said, that's if they stay healthy. Because even, Bill Plunkett from the OKC Register, he is getting a lot of heat for being, a grumpy grandpa, but he's kind of being a realist about everything. When's the last time this Dodgers rotation has ever been fully healthy?
Right.
I mean, the last time I could think about, having two dogs in the rotation and leading the pack, I mean, you have to go way back to like 2015 when Kershaw and Greinke were going on Linsanity mode during the middle of the summer. I mean, Kershaw, hasn't reached the 200 inning, count in a long time. Carlos mentioned in the chat the last Dodgers pitcher to reach 200 innings was Walker Buehler in 2021, which was his peak year. And we saw what happened the very next season. He ended up throwing out his arm and had to get another Tommy John surgery. So it is a risk. I think the thought process for the Dodgers the rest of this offseason is say, hey, let's just get as many starting pitchers as we can, because we know if we re-sign Buehler and we re-sign Kershaw is more than likely going on the 60-day IL. They're going to treat it like they did this year. Maybe he comes back in June, July, or hell, maybe even August if they really want to push it that far. Buehler, I don't think he should go to a team to be the guy or to be the guy that they depend on. I think being in a 6-man rotation with the Dodgers right now makes the most sense for him, because then it gives him the ability to have a lot of rest between starts, not kind of overwork himself, and then he has the opportunity to build on his postseason legacy and play for a contending team. The reason why I think Roki Sasaki even makes more sense for the Dodgers now is because they already announced that they want to do a 6-man rotation. That's what they've done in the MPB. And I think out of all the teams that have been in on Sasaki, the Dodgers can just be like, well, we can get you for 100 innings. We saw that you haven't really been over that in Japan. Your career high is 120 and you have a lot of injury risk. I feel like the Dodgers could just throw him in there and he could be a long relief guy in the bullpen, or can just be that 6 or 7 starter for the Dodgers throughout the year. So, and he really costs nothing. Pennies on the dollar with the international pool money. If they really want to make it happen, they can do it, piss off baseball even more. And then Bobby Miller's another thing. It's like, what are we going to get out of him? I don't even imagine. I imagine he'll get a shot to make the big league roster during spring training, especially with, we don't know the full health on Tyler Glass now. We don't know, where the rest of these pitchers are. If Ohtani's not ready to be in the rotation, who's going to take those spots? They could always add in free agency or trade. And I like what Carlos is saying in the chat as well. Hell, go scorched earth and just trade for Garrett Crochet. Everyone's concerned about his innings. All right, well, make him the 5th or 6th starter in your rotation. You got 2 lefties in there now. So Dodgers, the possibilities are limitless right now. And I think that's why there's a lot of people scared in Major League Baseball right now.
And the thing is when you add too many starting pitchers, that's going to affect the relievers also. Because if you're going to be adding on, 6 or 7, starter pitchers, you just eliminated 1 to 2 relievers, from your pitching staff that's there. So the Dodgers got to be careful in regards to how many, top end arms are going to be adding to this rotation that's there. So it's kind of difficult, kind of like what I wrote in my article today. It's kind of a great thing to have, but and to have as a problem. But the organization is going to have to figure that out, and see what they're going to do to it, because there's a lot of great arms, that are in the farm system. Just like Roy has said, we haven't even talked about Nick Ferrasso yet. and his contribution, that he can make to the team. Are these kids going to have a shot to come up this year, and start in the beginning of the year to see what they have and see what they can prove, and build that, um, that market for them if they choose not to do it, at least get some eyes on them to say yes, a Ferris, a Ferrasso, even a Casparius, if we're going to be trading for some bigger arms, at least they've proven themselves so far and could be used as trade pieces. But those three guys I would much rather keep over Bobby Miller. As the chat could pretty find out, I'm not a huge Bobby Miller fan. I never have. I think the Dodgers had made the mistake. I think they should have traded him, you know, over to Florida and kept Pepio. He's a much better pitcher.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what the Dodgers do with the rest of the starting rotation. Whether some of these guys are used as trade chips. If Gonsolin and May don't have a spot, do they possibly get traded? Does like I said, possibilities are limitless, and I still think they are going to add to this starting rotation. I think you can say Kershaw re-signing is a lock. I still think the
Mhm.
door is wide open for Walker Buehler to re-sign with the team, and he said he wants to come back. Hell, if you really even want to keep going the free agency route, Jack Flaherty seemed to enjoy his time here, and I think he would really benefit from a six-man rotation that's this deep as well. So all doors are open for all those guys. Let's get into the big controversial topic. I know with all of us Dodger fans here, we are okay with our team spending money and being the big bad money machine in the league right now. Let's talk about the Dodgers payroll and where they kind of are, whether it's projected, and then kind of what they can still do and all the possibilities they have there. And then we'll also go over everybody's favorite words, the deferrals, and where they sit with those for the foreseeable future. So if you're looking at the CBD payroll, which is really the one that really counts towards a club, that's where you start getting the tax penalties. That's where you start losing international pool money. That's where you start losing, draft picks and if you're over a certain amount. And the Dodgers are well on their way to leading Major League Baseball for this upcoming season with an estimated CBD payroll of $306 million, according to Fangraphs. That would be the most in Major League Baseball, as I mentioned. However, if you look at projected active payroll, they would actually just be seventh at $198 million. Obviously, having a lot of, the Ohtani deferrals, it helps that, but people need to remember his modern day value is still $46 million a year,
Mhm.
not that $2 million. I can't believe we're still a year removed from all of this and people still don't understand how that entire contract works, especially the fact that they have to start putting that money into escrow right now. Like I said, the hedge fund billionaires that run the team, this is like cake work to them. They do this on a larger scale. So that's why the Dodgers are taking full advantage of everything that they've been doing. Um, Payroll, the Dodgers are going to lead. They're going to spend the money. I don't think they're done. Are you okay with the Dodgers spending this much money this offseason, especially with the window they have with the players they have under contract for the next couple of years?
I'm okay with them spending the money. I don't have any problem with that. It's kind of like what we touched on in the beginning of the podcast in itself. The Dodgers have the money to spend. They're willing to spend it, so spend it. Spend the money on some good players. To give the fans a show. Even though ticket prices, parking, food, and everything at Dodger Stadium is going to go up. If the fans aren't going to like that, then they'll let the organization know by not buying tickets and watching it on Sportsnet LA. So spend the money on what it is, but spend it wisely on players that we need. And if we don't need to spend it, then don't spend it. I think the Dodgers organization has proven that. They don't just go out and just randomly. I think what uh, Snell's contract reminds me of Freddie Freeman's contract. When he signed, it's almost identical to that. You got Yamamoto who signed a 10-year deal. You got Yamamoto, you got Shohei Ohtani, and you got Mookie Betts. There's three players now that have long-term contracts. When for years they had problems with that. Dodger fans were always we're always saying sign somebody to a long-term contract. It was always 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, with opt outs. They'd stay there for like 1 or 2 years and then they'd be gone. You know, so Yeah, I'm glad that the direction is where this organization is heading right now, and I think it's great. Yeah, I know we're gonna get you know tap into the Juan Soto stuff, so I'll leave my comments about him here shortly. But spend the money, we have it.
Yeah, and then to kind of build off that point, obviously we see across social media right now, people are very unhappy. I think they're unhappy because the defending world champs, I guess, after spending over $1 billion, albeit most of that was for two players. You got Otani for the 700 million deal. You got Yamamoto for the $325 million deal. They didn't think, I guess, they were going to sign any other players after they won a World Series. You know, I don't know what's up with those guys, but do you think it's just a bad thing in baseball that there seems to be some disparity between, what the Dodgers are doing and what others are doing? Or you just think it's, you mentioned at the beginning of the show kind of where it's like those owners of those small market teams can afford contracts. They just choose not to.
Every owner of every team has the money to spend. You know, if they choose to spend it, they'll spend it. If they don't, they won't. You know, let's use the Orioles. They have a just an elite prospects through drafting. You know, they're they're doing all their drafting. They're getting all these elite players out of college, out of high school. That's in their farm system. Um, they're always in the top tier as far as number one, number two. In the top 10, there's always a player from the Orioles. In that. So, but what do they spend their money on? What do they have to show for that? They're used for trade pieces for players that aren't really contributing to it. Go out and spend some money on, let's just say, a Crochet or something to go over there, and help their pitching out. Some infielders, some outfielders. Find a couple, two players, and build your team around them, and spend the money so you're competitive. For your fan base. Because once your fan base is excited, you know, like the Dodgers have shown, they have put the blueprint, out there for every organization to follow. Spend some money, the revenue will come in, and it pays for itself.
Let's get into the part where I think a lot of people are even getting more and more upset, and that's the deferrals. Deferrals are nothing new in Major League Baseball. It's kind of
Not
been
at
in the
all.
CBT for, like decades now. I mean, the Mets made it very famous with Bobby Bonilla Day, where they pay him a certain amount of money on the same day each year. Um, that's like the most famous one. The Nationals, Max, they're still paying Max Scherzer for the deal that they gave him after 2013. So I
Right.
mean, if you're going to see how extensive this stuff gets, deferrals are a thing of baseball. It has to be agreed on to the player to sign that deal. And, at the end of the day, it's not the teams taking advantage. It's both the team and the player coming to an agreement to say, hey, I really want to sign here. I'm going to help you guys out in any way for the salary and all that stuff. But in terms of the Dodgers, I can see why people are saying it's a little bit over excessive. But at the same time, any other team in the league can do that. Before this season, I'll give you the rundown of everything. They had $915 million from 2028 to 2044 in deferred money in terms of payments. They have to pay Will Smith $50 million after his contract and deferrals that he signed last year. Otani is obviously the big one,
Hmm.
$680 million in deferrals. No other player is going to do that in Major League Baseball history, at least until, someone else of his magnitude can match that of Otani's in terms of international popularity. I mean, my guy just prints money with endorsement deals, whether it's through New Balance or like,
Right.
anything else you can think of, watches, luxury items. Otani knew he could make that money back, so he didn't need to make the salary now. Freddie Freeman, you mentioned, very similar to the Blake Snell deal, 57 million due from 2028 to 2040. Teoscar Hernandez, who even just signed a 1-year deal. We all remember he has $8.5 million deferred from 2030 to 2039. And then Mookie Betts has 115 million in deferred money from 2033 to 2044. And then you add Blake Snell, who has had the reported 62 million in deferments from after his contract ends to whatever year that they end it. So that brings it around $977 million in deferred payments, almost $1 billion in deferrals. the thing you have to remember is that even though that's still counting against the Dodgers, once those players are gone and their contracts are up, deferral payments don't count towards the CBT and they
No.
don't count towards the active payroll. So once they are done, retired, their contract expired, the Dodgers can still technically reset their CBT and continue to spend money. It does not matter. And I think more and more fans think it's an unfair game. Do you feel that way, or are we kind of on the same wavelength here where anybody can do it?
We're on the same wavelength. You know, anybody can do it. Any team can do it. Any general manager can do it. Any agent that represents any player can do can accept it. Any player can accept it. You know, it's not like the Dodgers. You know, everybody who comes to the team, like Blake Snell, you know, and they say, hey, you know, what do you think about? I'm sure they just didn't come out and say, you know, here's your contract, and this is the only contract that you know that you have there. You know, they probably gave him like three different options, you know, with the deferral portion of it, and him and his agent accepted that. If they didn't want the deferrals that were in there, he wouldn't be a Dodger right now. So it's not just, you know, the team. In my opinion, what the Dodgers are doing is good business. That's the whole part of it. It's good business for the team, you know, for the organization. You know, they're going to have money like we talked about already. You know, they're making money off of TV deals. They're making money off of endorsements, all the swag that's being sold. You know, out of the stores. You know, they're making money. Where that money goes, you know, and the amount of interest that you know that is going to be made on that, and going to be. I'm just throwing out examples. That's going to be thrown out or given for the to pay the deferrals. I mean, there's different ways, you know, that's there. So I don't have a problem with it. You know, I think it's fine. I did, it's just like Max Scherzer. You know when he was signed, when he was over, you know, with Washington, was everybody complaining about you know his gig and what he got? You know, no.
Yeah, no. And it's funny because we'll get into the Juan Soto thing, but realistically, the Dodgers, I mentioned their CBT, projected payroll is $306 million. That's still over $60 million less than what the Mets was last year.
Hmm.
They had a CBT payroll at a major league I get like most at $374 million. So the Dodgers could theoretically get, Juan Soto for a 60 million AAV and still be just under that number. So I mean, spending in baseball is nothing new. The big market teams are always going to spend money. And like Chris Frosaker brings up in the chat, when these larger market teams spend money and then they have to pay those taxes, where does that money go? It goes to the other teams around the league.
Hmm.
It gets dispersed to the smaller market teams. So if anyone, I know you can be upset, but then you can be like, oh, well, I wish I spent that money, or I wish I had this money to spend. Well, actually, the Dodgers are giving you money too. They're giving you money that you
Right.
should be using to sign players and do all that. But my biggest pet peeve about all of this right now is that the reason I like baseball more than any other sport, and the reason why a lot of the athletes, compared to the NBA, the NFL, and all that, salary cap. I think that's the
Yes.
worst thing to add to sports, and I think that's what makes baseball unique. And I think is what when you sign those players to a contract, you're actually giving them the money that they are rightfully owed because they're among the best athletes in the world. They should be paid that way. And the teams that want to win and spend money, they shouldn't be penalized for that. So salary cap, is that something that you see for baseball in the future? Because I think some owners want it, and if it ends up going to the next CBA, I mean, I feel like it's not going to go well for any side because the players don't want this at all. They want teams like the Dodgers to continuously spend money, set the market for them, and then they continually get raises year after year. And whether it's inflation or just, their market just increases with the amount of money that the teams are making. Any thoughts on that at all?
Not a big fan of the salary cap. You know, baseball is doing what baseball does. Kind of like what Mike Lopez, you know, just wrote in the chat. All eyes are on baseball right now. You know, seeing how this works. You know, I'm gonna assume, or I'm gonna make the assumption that all the other baseball players unions are looking at what baseball is doing and make a push for you know for what we're doing and get rid of the salary caps. It doesn't do anything, for the organizations. Um, you're still signing, you're still spending some money, even though it's just capped out. Who sets that cap? That's there, in regards to a player and what their worth is. So I'm not a big fan of it. Play the players, what they deserve and what they're going to be paid for, and move on.
Yeah, and then Ken Rosenthal, even today in the same episode of Foul Territory, he brought up, he said, if owners bring up a cap in baseball, there's going to be a work stoppage. You're going to see the players union go on
Oh yeah,
strike because they don't want that to happen at all. That's the whole reason why, they went on strike in the 90s. Some owners didn't want to pay them these fees, but then you have owners like the Dodgers and the Yankees, the Mets, they have the money, they want to spend the money. I don't understand, with everything going on in the, America right now. Don't you not want these billionaires to continuously just keep their money? Wouldn't you want them to invest in the team? The Dodgers use around 60% of their revenue on their roster. You can't say that about most of those smaller market teams. They still make around 300, 400 million dollars in their revenue, but they choose to spend 100 million or less on their roster, like the teams like the Rays, the Pirates, the Oakland A's, or the former
right.
Oakland A's, the Sacramento A's, whatever you want to call them. Those are the teams that's what's wrong with baseball right now. And I'll firmly argue that to the end of time. I don't believe in a salary cap. I don't even really believe in a salary floor. I think it should just be a
Right.
free market. It should
Yeah.
That's what capitalism is, baby. That's we're playing in the USA. That's the free market. That's if these teams don't want to spend their money, so be it. You want to be fans of that team, push for new ownership to come in. Like the Orioles is another one because I'm curious to what they're going to do because their ownership for the past, 20, 30 years has been penny pitchers. And then they get another billionaire to purchase their team and he wants to spend money. He hasn't done it yet, but that's what other teams and their fan bases need to do. I mean, the Dodgers have been through this, with
Well,
their
that's
former owner.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, we went through it, from the former owner until the Guggenheim Group came in. Now we're reaping the benefits, and the fans are getting what they've been calling for years. Go out and spend some money on on players to some contracts. The Guggenheim Group went in there. They're business savvy people. They have Magic Johnson that's in there that was affiliated with the Lakers, who's a player, and a sportsman and knows about athletics. You know, like I said, the Dodgers organization is setting the example for it has the blueprint for everybody to follow. It's just if they're going to do it or not.
All righty. So we talked a lot about payroll. We talked about Blake Snell. Of course, we have to touch on someone that we've been talking about the past couple weeks. And when you mentioned his name earlier, and that is the Juan Soto, the top free agent of this year's class. Obviously, we've all seen the reports, whether on social media, whether you got your Latin American insiders kind of throwing out information. You got your credited beat writers like Ken Rosenthal, Jeff Passan, John Heyman, all those guys. We kind of have a firm idea of the top teams involved, and the Dodgers are in fact one of those 5 teams. I believe it's the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Mets, the Blue Jays, and the Dodgers have all been reported to have at least submitted an offer to Juan Soto. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, every insider like John Heyman and Ken Rosenthal, they've all reported that the interest is real for the Dodgers. Are you surprised that they are looking in to bring another guy that's going to get a long-term deal well over 500, $600 million?
I'm not surprised that the Dodgers are interested in them. They're going to be interested in almost every player that's going to be on the market. But I may be the oddball guy out. But I'm not a Juan Soto fan. I think he's a great player. He has the capabilities, of doing great things. He's still a young kid, that can has just a tremendous upstart, to his career. But personally, I'd much rather Dodgers, spend that, $600 million on, another pitcher and, let's just say uh, a shortstop, another outfielder. I'd love for them, to spend some money and keep Teoscar Hernandez and Kike Hernandez, and keep them around. Hell, the Dodgers organization, has a Juan Soto type in their farm system right now by the name of Zaire Hope. He's a young kid who plays really good outfield and that can crush the ball. So, I mean, we already have a Juan Soto, in my opinion, that's in the organization that we can bring up at any time. But, like I said, I'm not a big fan of him. I like him, as a player. I kind of like what Roger had stated, a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago. You know, I don't believe all the reports that, he wouldn't fit into, the clubhouse or this and that. I agree with Roger. I seen it on Sportsnet LA, when the Dodgers were in the playoffs, when he came to Dodger Stadium, when Matt Scherzer was there, and God, why am I drawing a blank on the
Trey
shortstop's
Turner.
name? Trey Turner, and he's supporting Trey Turner in the stand. That's a good teammate. That's a teammate that's supporting, a player that's no longer on his team that got traded to another team, and he's there supporting them, because he's out of the playoffs and now he's there. So I don't believe the reports, in regards to that. Could he come in and fit into this team? Yeah, probably. I just rather spend the money somewhere else, kind of like what I was saying with Otani, which, I didn't gain a whole lot of fans for, is like, why are we going to spend 700 millions on one guy when we can spread that money out, amongst others, but in my opinion, I think if we were going to be spending $600 million on one player, we could get three players that are going to benefit the team even more.
Yeah, I think one key interesting part of this, I think if the Dodgers' interest is legit
It is.
and Juan Soto doesn't want deferrals, I would say the best course of action is to hope that if he does sign with you, that you have the opt out around his age 29 or 30 season, because theoretically Juan Soto could sign a 14-year deal, $700 million. Say that's the number he wants to hit with the Dodgers, but he has the ability to opt out when he's 30, still in his prime. With, if he wants to play until he's 40 or 41, he can get another 10-year deal with even more money. And I mentioned it on last week's live, the Infinite Dodger on X. He put it out there. I think if Juan Soto really does want to play and win championships, he signs a long-term deal with the opt-outs. If you're the Dodgers, I mean, or if you're a Juan Soto, or if you're a fan, I feel like you have to be all over if he wants to just play for the team for 3 or 4 years and then opt out and go somewhere else. If he opts in, I mean, that's the risk you have to take. Like, say, you never know, something like an injury could happen, and then you're on the hook for this guy for the foreseeable, next 10 years. But I think if the Dodgers, they're going to go that Bryce Harper reported contract route. They're going to say, hey, we really want you for 3 or 4 years. We're going to give you like $60 million a year. You want to join this team that's on the cusp of being the next, dynasty, rivaling that of the early 2000 Yankees. I feel like that would be hard to turn down from Soto. And I also agree. I feel like the Mets, they have the money, but I just don't feel like they have the pull as a lot of people say they do. It takes a
Mhm.
lot of guts to leave the New York Yankees, especially when you were part of that team, that culture, and you were probably, in my opinion, the reason they won the American League pennant. Without him, you can make the argument the Yankees aren't, a World Series, contender.
No, completely
And
agree.
they shown that before, even the year prior in 2023, they didn't make the postseason. And the years prior to that, they haven't made the World Series since 2009. So if he leaves the Yankees, I think it's all bets are off. He could go to the Dodgers. I think that's like the scorched earth thing. I think if it happens, I don't even know what the state of the league would be in terms of on social media. I will be celebrating, and I know a lot of people will be
It'd be
mad.
insane.
Like I've stated multiple times before, I don't really see it happening. I would give it less than 5%, but you never know. Andrew Freeman loves to take advantage of those small percentages. I didn't think they would ever get Freddie Freeman. I never thought Mookie Betts was going to get traded. Otani hitting the open market and getting signed to that massive deal, especially when we were all tracking the play in Toronto. This team never ceases to amaze me. So I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up signing with the Dodgers, but I just don't see it happening.
I agree. I won't be shocked either, but I'm on the same boat you're on. I give it 5% or less. I think the Yankees are going to re-sign him. They're going to look at the contracts. They're going to match it. Honestly, I think Juan Soto is an East Coast guy. He likes the East Coast, in my opinion. and I think he's going to stay there, and he's going to be a Yankee.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. All signs are actually pointing to him signing around or before the or during the winter meetings, which I think is great. I know baseball kind of has a weird, type of free agency period in the NFL and the NBA that all these guys are like off the board within like the first couple weeks. With the NBA, it's like the first couple hours. All those guys have like handshake agreements with other clubs. MLB, you kind of hope that everything gets done at or around the end of
Mm-hmm.
December. The past couple years, it hasn't really been like that, especially, after the 2022 or the 2021 season where they had, the work stoppage and then the unions kind of battling with each other. And then last year, a lot of, the Boris Four, they all went unsigned
Right.
after January. So I don't think that happens again this year. I think it would be really good for Soto to be signed by or during the winter meetings. And I kind of think that's where it's going. Ken Rosenthal talked about that today as well, where he thinks that, the offers are going to start coming in right now. And I think the Dodgers are going to realize early on if they're really in on this or if they're out. I think after the first wave or two of offers, if Soto's really not biting at the short-term deal with opt-outs or the AAV front-loaded, I think you're going to see them pivot and, like you said, Mike, start putting that money to other places. I think the big one would be re-signing Teoscar Hernandez. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as they realize they're out in the Soto market, I just feel like it's a no-brainer. They probably have him on the back where like, hey, Teo, we love you. We just have to do our due diligence here and see if we can get this guy. If not, we're going to come straight to you. And I feel like he has to be smart. Most big market teams that are going to be, because whoever doesn't sign Juan Soto, they're going to go to Teoscar Hernandez. That's like the next
Oh,
best
definitely,
available outfield bat.
definitely.
So I feel like that just makes all the sense in the world. But you can
I
use that money elsewhere.
I think once Juan Soto signs, you're going to see Teoscar sign with the Dodgers. Almost immediately afterwards, and then we'll be able to sign Kike Hernandez. And then actually give Tommy Edman that extension that everybody's talking about right now, and keeping that guy around. He's another person that needs to stick around. Getting or not Blake Snell, getting Blake Triton, signed back up. He's proven to be a good reliever. Give him a 1 year contract. I think this is probably going to be his last year, since he's almost turning 40. And the Dodgers organization, has some good, strong, young arms, that can take that role, not throw the crazy pitches, that Triton throws, but it's just as good as could be just as good as a reliever as he is.
Alrighty, you mentioned it already. This is a great way to segue to it. Tommy Edman. We all saw what he did after the Dodgers acquired him at the trade deadline. He comes on the team. He's on the 60-day IL, nursing an ankle injury and a wrist injury. Once he's activated, we see what he can do against Southpaws. Hits really well against them. Has the ability to play all over the middle infield, in center field, Gold Glove defense. Kind of the total package, especially for you could say a borderline bench player slash starter utility player. Um, it's been reported by John Morosi. I mean, I don't know if we want to really. I don't know how much trust we put in Morosi these days, especially last year. I know he's definitely still hearing it for the playing comments, but this is something I kind of do think will kind of happen because I feel like he's just been so good for the Dodgers in just his short time. And that is the potential. They've had preliminary talks about a possible extension. Would you be surprised if Edman and the Dodgers ended up agreeing to another multi-year extension? He is under control for the rest of this season, but he will be a free agent at the end. What are your
2025.
thoughts on it, and would you be on board with it?
I'm totally on board with it. I like Tommy Edman. Even the Dodgers organization likes Tommy Edman. They've been looking at him, from reports, for years on wanting to sign him and pick him up. The guy played 37 games in the regular season, hit 237 with 6 home runs and 20 RBIs. And that's just in the regular season. And then he slashed, 3.328, with 20 hits, 12 runs, 2 home runs, and 13 RBIs, in the postseason, and then won, the most valuable player, in the NLCS. So yes, extend the guy. But the question is, it was that a one-hit wonder, for that. Do we want to make I don't want to say mistake, but do we want to give him the same contract that we did with CT3 and watch him struggle for the next year or two, be able to hit and strike out all the time? I don't think Tommy Edman's going to do that. I think he's a much better player. He's a much better. I wouldn't say he's a much better fielder than Chris Taylor, but he is a much better infielder than Chris Taylor. He can play second base, which he's been playing second base for years. He can move over to shortstop. He can move over to third. You know, there's a lot of versatility in him, and I would say extend him, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the CT3 contract. That's kind of the benchmark. I feel like if you're him and you're Tommy Edmonds camp, you look at that 4-year, $60 million deal and say, "Hey, I'm better. I'm a better utility player than Chris Taylor. I have a better track record. I'm more of elite with the glove, and I won a LCS MVP with you guys too, and I got the job done in the fall classic. I had a key home run in game 2 off of Carlos Rodon. You know, I'm your guy. I can be your guy for the foreseeable future and give you that lineup flexibility. And that's kind of what I argued in my article on Dodgers Beat. Not only does Edman give you the flexibility defensively, the ability to play shortstop, second base, center field, corner outfield, if you really want to put him there. Hell, if you wanted to teach him third base, I bet you could play a couple innings there as
Mm-hmm.
well. But he also gives you the lineup flexibility because he's not just a platoon bat like Chris Taylor is right now in his career. Edman's a switch hitter, and I know
Yeah.
he hits lefties significantly better, but he has the ability to hit righties, and he's shown that, throughout his career. He's never been the offensive first type of guy. Career average around, somewhere around the 260 mark. This past year, especially in October, I feel like that was kind of more of him, getting hot at the right time. I don't think we're going to see that over a sample size of 150 to 162 games, and you would be foolish to think that. My thing is, would the Dodgers be reluctant to give a utility player that type of contract like Chris Taylor? Because you mentioned they're kind of, eating themselves right now with the Chris Taylor contract. I bet you if they could get him off the books, they could, but it's a very hard contract to trade away when he's due $13 million and he's a
Right.
way well below average player at this point in his
Mm-hmm.
career. It's going to be interesting. I'm fully on board with it. I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. Whether it's, I would say most of the extensions happen definitely in the offseason. I wouldn't see the two sides coming in an agreement during the regular season, maybe spring
No.
training, but we'll see what happens.
No, I hope they resign him. If they give him the 60 million, if they give him the Chris Taylor deal, and he accepts it. You know, the thing is like with these players in the Dodgers organization, and the way that they're treated and how they're handled, uh, unlike any other organization. If the guy gets that much money, you know, will he take it? If he really wants to be there, he will. He doesn't have to take, if he's after the bag and just wants, get as much money as he can, then yeah, he can go somewhere else, that's in there. But is he get treated the way, that he has been, since he's been with LA? Is his team that he's playing for going to be, going into the postseason almost every single year, you know, winning the National League almost every single year, with the opportunity of going to the World Series almost every single year? Is he going to go to a team like that? Probably not. So it's going to be up to that player, especially Tommy Edman. And I think if they gave him a deal like they did with Chris Taylor, he'd probably take it and keep it. The guys from San Diego, he'd be able to stay on the West Coast, and not being able to travel back east or in the flyover states and go play for one of those teams.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. If I'm Tommy Edman, I want to stay with this organization as
Yep.
long as I can, especially while they're in this competitive window where it seems like they're going to be the World Series favorites probably for the next at least 5 years, bearing any significant changes in the National League. We'll kind of end on this. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Mike, do you have any type of traditions that you do? What do you got cooking up in your house tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow I just got done actually brining the turkey that I have because I will be smoking our turkey like I do almost every single year. Starting tomorrow morning, about what, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll get up and put it on there and let it smoke for quite a while. and then my daughter and her husband will be over, and we will be spending Thanksgiving with them and celebrating our brand new grandchild that we just had about 3 months ago. So super excited about it. Can't wait, and I'm thankful for a lot. My family's been blessed. Um, I'm also thankful that I will be retiring after 34 years of service in the fire department, in the next 3 weeks, to where my concentration is going to be going to Dodgers Beat and to Bleed Lows podcast to come over. Make sure you subscribe because I will be filling Roger's inbox with a bunch of content that I'm going to be getting from spring training.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you smoke your turkey because that's something I've
Oh,
done
yeah.
every year since I've owned my house. We actually have quite a few people come over since we usually are the ones hosting for the past 3 or 4 years. So we actually do two turkeys. I'll do one deep fried and then I'll do one smoked. So, have enough meat. We'll have ham, stuffing, all that stuff. It is a whole process. I enjoy it. Getting up, like you said, at around 4 or 5 in the morning, getting the smoker ready, getting the
Oh,
turkey
yeah.
in there, letting it cook, drinking a couple beers, wine, you name it, and then finally digging in and eating as well. It's our family. My son, he's like 1.5 now, so it's his second Thanksgiving, but now he's kind of running around, so it's a little
Heck
bit more
yeah.
fun now. So, like you said, a lot to be thankful for. Whether you're a Dodgers fan and you're thankful that they won the World Series, whether it's something with your family. If you guys want to comment what you're doing, comment what you're thankful for, Dodgers, family, whatever, you name it. And like you said, a lot of stuff coming for the channel, a lot of stuff coming for the content on the website as well, dodgersbeat.com. We're going to have content. We already have a lot of content right now. If you guys go check out our YouTube page, we got interviews with Anthony Banda, Oral Hershiser, Steve Stacks. We had, the Otani lookalike contest the other day. That's a wacky video to check out there. We talked with the winner of the contest. We got a lot more content, all of those interviews. We're trying to do a live every week, at least 1 to 2 episodes. So, guys, we want to keep growing this channel. I know we've had some changes, but guess what? We're going to continue growing, and then
Mhm.
we're going to try to get, goal is to shoot for 15 or up by the time, the 2025 season rolls around when these teams are playing in Japan. So it's only up from here, and we got the pretty much next week when we're here, we'll be a week or two away from the winter meetings when the action really gets going for the MLB offseason. I'm really excited for it.
And one thing, Cody, just to answer William's question there, make sure you follow Dodgers Beat on Twitter. Roger's all over those things. He usually goes to all of those events. So I'm sure he'll be at Yamava on December 8th. So make sure you follow the Dodgers Beat Twitter because they'll throw the announcement out that they will be there covering that event.
Yeah, like I said, subscribe to the channel, like the video. It really helps with the algorithm. It helps with the growth of the page. And then dodgersbeat.com. I've stated it time and time again. Mike and myself, we do write for the website daily. We got everything. It's all connected, guys. The YouTube channel, the
Mm-hmm.
social media pages, and then the website. It's all connected. It all helps us grow as a community. So that'll do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. Mike, thanks again for coming on
Thanks for
short
having me.
notice. And I love talking ball with you. And then I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving tomorrow. And I hope
You too.
everybody enjoys their Thanksgiving. But other than that, we'll see what the Dodgers are going to be cooking up over the next couple days. And we will see you on the next one. And
Happy
this
Thanksgiving to everybody.
and this episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Have a nice night, everybody.